Thank you very much. We have 5 minutes for questions. Lander and Fins.
Wow, that's a lot so I'm just going to pick out a couple little things. So you mentioned this meeting where Bob Waterston got support from Merck. So we don't have to speculate entirely there because 2 years later, I went to get money from 4 pharmaceutical companies to do the same thing with regard to human SNPs. So Craig Venter was going to go to the pharmaceutical companies and charge them a lot of money to get a secret database of human genetic variation, and it was a lot of money. We were generating this, and we're doing it at 1/5 of the cost, and I thought this was a terrible idea. We should just kill this. So I went to 4 pharmaceutical companies and said, here's the deal. Go in on the cost, and everybody, it gets released to the public, no special advantages, and they all agreed to it because they said this should be a public good. Yep. Now you raise this question though, there's this idea that Venter was evil because he was corporate. I don't think he was evil because he was corporate. I think because he was evil because he was trying to withhold information that would be much more valuable to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. So in the other case, these corporate actors were acting with a public good spirit, admittedly a self-interest too, but a self-interest that served the public interest. So I feel like there are coalitions we build, and if we can't build coalitions with corporations, we're gonna be kind of limited in who we can build coalitions with. Yep. Now I agree with you about Illumina has its eyes set on owning the interpretation. But there's a whole lot of folks in the world of genomics who know that and are dead set against allowing that to happen. And there are efforts right now to make sure that that does not happen, that is going to happen in some other open way. So I think folks are aware of the importance of the openness of the information and are creating alliances and have been over 2 decades, creating alliances to back a view of the world of that as a public good. Mm-hmm. Finally, and I could talk about many of the wonderful things you talked about, California and your taco. That's your state government forcing you to do this. Is it not possible to get Californians to say to their governor and their legislature, why are you forcing us to hand over our DNA to the state of California and embarrass them into removing such a thing? So this is not a question of, this is a question of political power. Why, if this is there, is that political power not wielded by citizens against the state entity? So anyway, I've thrown a bunch of things back at you. Thank you for this amazing range of things, and I'll stop there.
Really helpful set of comments. I agree with your interpretation of what actually happened. The issue is that the public framing of it was seen as Venter is evil because he's corporate. Of course, he even, and if you actually read about what happened, you would come to the conclusion you came to. He does not agree, he would not agree with you that. Let's not get into who is good and evil. My whole point is that this framing doesn't work. A framing of good versus evil, public versus, I agree with you, actually. Doesn't work. Bruns would agree with you. We can't do this kind of line drawing. That's not how ethics works. And so essentially, I agree with you, and I tell that story in the book. Okay, but the problem is we're laboring under a narrative that's powerful when it comes to most people, all right? And it doesn't help the cause. So that's the first point. So there's a difference between what actually happens and what actually is also happening is we get these big narratives. And they have effects. On the last point, I would disagree that it's the state there. It's formerly the University of California. It's really Atul Butte. And Atul Butte came to UC San Francisco from Stanford, bunch of companies there. It would be hard to say that UC San Francisco is really corporate. And there's a big drive, here's my logic here. Atul, UC Health wants to collect all that data from its 14 million people. And what should have happened, there's 2 issues there. It's the form, which is University of California, and what I've been told about that, they still use the same form. I wrote the article attempting to, and they responded in the San Francisco Chronicle, and they said, bureaucratic mess, we can't, we're trying, but this is not actually what would happen, we're trying. So it's not the state. It is, I think, a university that is set on collecting this data as a way to deal with the fact that the public is divesting from universities as part of your partnership, as part of the partnership you're talking about. We now have private-public partnership. Atul, Butte, and others at University of California are saying that the good thing is that the public should support these new companies forming.
He is a state employee, and you can make a point over that. There is a point of
Part of
leverage.
his job is he's a state employee. He has other jobs.
I wish to give short word to Professor Fins, please.
Jenny, thank you for a really wonderful tour de force, and the invocation upon Arendt, who I think is relevant by analogy, maybe not directly so, but by analogy, and it really is about a power. It is a power narrative. And Eric's question sort of got to it, but what is the countervailing response to the overwhelming concentration of power? Not all of it's bad. One extreme would be total distrust in the scientific endeavor, the anti-vaxxers, populism, or the misappropriation of knowledge, or the shutting down of pharma. What do you see as a prudential response in that perhaps engages with what Amy Gutman describes as deliberative democracy and education? I think you're heading in that direction with your program at your university, but at a more macro scale, how would you envision a kind of collective response to educate people about what is in the public good, and what's good for science is good for society, and vice versa? Just if you could speculate on that.
Yeah, sometimes I feel overwhelmed. I just want to get on my bike and bike. Other times I feel more practical. I'm actually really curious what's going on behind the scenes at Illumina. It's a massive force. You'll have to do tell at some point. I know lots of people who work at Illumina. I hang out and have beers with them sometimes. Obviously, it's not about the people in these institutions either. They're wonderful. It is, I think, about the way and this is something that sociologists of science and technology have been writing about a long time, the way in which informatic systems allow us to concentrate power, just the way in which the railroads allowed us to concentrate power. So it may be in the nature of the system that it concentrates power. So then it becomes a question of how, in Facebook, we have this situation with Facebook. Lots of people have tried to imagine alternatives to Facebook, but ultimately Facebook has how many billion people on it? And if you want to start your own thing, how are you going to do that? So I do think, in my own mind, what I've been throwing my weight down with, I think we need vision. I think we need better narratives. I think we need to be saying those things on the highest places that we can. It's great that the Vatican has convened this meeting. I think we have to defend the universities. I think we have to defend their commitments to knowledge. And I do think it's a problem, although we might think of it as partnership. I do think the power balance is uneven. I don't think partner is the wrong term. I think we have liberalism hates the concentration of power. I think using partner fools us into thinking that power is not concentrating when it is. And I think those are, I'm not giving you the answer. We need to defend universities. We need better vision.
Thank
and
you
I'm not
very
sure
much.
what else we need.
Thank you very much, Professor Erdan.